The young man who you just saw in the photos is DarlWyn DeVron. DarlWyn is like a brother to me. He and I met 7 years ago in Baltimore, Maryland, where we're both from. And when I met DarlWyn, he was 15 years old. DarlWyn is currently 22 years old, living in a drug rehabilitation center in New York City. He is right now challenging and struggling through an addiction to crack cocaine, an addiction to crystal meth, and addiction to Special K. He has suffered over the years and has been in this rehabilitation center for the past 10 or 11 months. He recently, this summer, relapsed and has now been committed for an additional 6 months. DarlWyn's well aware of the fact that I'm sharing this story with you guys, and I have not really ever publicly discussed him or his problems, but with the platform that I have now and with so many people viewing, it's necessary to share this message, especially for those who you may know in the community who have begun to dibble and dabble in the small drugs, because I want to share with you how DarlWyn's life has transitioned over this time. DarlWyn lost his mother. His mother passed away when he was a child. From there, he grew up in a household with his grandmother and his aunt and never quite felt loved. He never, not to say loved, but he never felt the same kind of love and received the same kind of attentions that he did from his mother when she was alive. As a result of that, DarlWyn has always suffered sort of a low self-esteem. At the age of 15, around the time when I met him, his grandmother and his aunt had found out about his sexuality and they put him out of the house. And he was then living in foster homes in Catonsville, Maryland, which is a county of Baltimore. And he was living in foster homes and then was adopted by the mother of another young man who I'm extremely close to. Both of them are like brothers to me. DarlWyn then began going to school in Baltimore City, in the city instead of the county, and he ended up dropping out of school in his senior year. From there, DarlWyn became a hot commodity on Baltimore circuit, and he was, you know, always out 3, 4, 5 nights a week. He was, you know, at that time just taking, not to say just taking ecstasy pills, but he was taking ecstasy, and I was slightly aware of it. I had only seen him do it once, which is March of 2004. And from there, as DarlWyn's self-esteem continued to, even though he was surrounded by so many people who wanted to know him, who wanted to surround themselves with him, who wanted to always be, you know, they held him up, and he was always going out, and, you know, it was the whole music and pizzazz and this whole, you know, fake pseudo celebrity lifestyle. And the ecstasy, eventually his body became so immune to it that he began to take cocaine, sniff cocaine, and it started with a few bumps here, a few bumps there, and that increased to him, you know, challenging himself and taking Special K and crystal meth, and just, it went on and on and on, to the point where DarlWyn began to, he was in a relationship at this time with a young man who was 10 years his senior. They were together, they've been together off and on for the past 5, 6 years, and the guy does take really good care of DarlWyn and really loves DarlWyn and really looks out for him, but it got to a point where, because his boyfriend travels often, DarlWyn got, you know, would steal. He would steal clothing out of the house, he would sell shoes, he would sell game systems, he would sell games. There was a point in time where he would sell his cell phones or trade them for drugs. And when I knew it was really bad was when DarlWyn began to start just disappearing for weeks at a time. He would be gone for like 2, 3 weeks on end, and no one would know where he was or what he was doing, and sort of what was happening with him. And DarlWyn would spend nights in crack houses, and he would be on the streets, and, you know, he basically lost himself. He lost himself, and you know, we've all tried to get DarlWyn focused. That he has held down jobs in the past few years. He has held down jobs, part-time jobs and things, but he then challenged himself and decided to come out here to California to pursue his modeling and acting career. DarlWyn is an extremely talented young man. He starred in my senior thesis film that won me the 2004 Experimental Media Arts Film Festival. You know, he starred in that film, and he's such a talented young man. He came out here to pursue his talent. Things didn't work out. He then moved to New York, and from there, a good friend of his moved in with him, and her girlfriend weren't contributing to the bills, and the stress of DarlWyn having to pay the bills on his own and having to sort of just take care of himself just without anyone's help was something he wasn't used to, and he turned towards the streets again. And that's when the situation really got bad, and he checked himself into rehab. And that's where he's been for the past almost a year. And it's been since July of 2007 that I've actually seen him in person. We talk to each other maybe once a month, once or twice a month, because he's always in meetings, and you know, my life is hectic, so we don't get to see each other and talk to each other often. But when we do, the conversations do go on for hours. And the thing that I'm proud of, I'm not ashamed of him, and I want you to know I'm proud of him. I love him because he has decided now in his life that he's not going to succumb to the drugs, and he's admitted and acknowledged the fact that he does have a problem, that he is addicted to drugs, and it's a problem and it's an addiction that he'll face for the rest of his life. But he has taken his life in his hands, and he has decided that no more is he going to allow crack and cocaine and pills to define who he is and to dictate his daily health. And so he is doing everything necessary. He's not in rehab by force of the courts or by force of family or anyone else. He's there by choice. And there are times when he's very depressed and sad and wants to give up and wants to leave, but he knows that at 22 he still has his entire life ahead of him. So I want you all out there, if you know young men and young women who are beginning to dibble and dabble in the drugs and who are beginning to become victims of this fanciful lifestyle that really is very dark at the end of the tunnel, share the DarlWyn DeVron story. I'm not able to give you as many details as I would like, but this is a young man who is so talented and beautiful on the inside and out, with such a carefree spirit and a love for the world, who at a very young age turned towards drugs to heal his pain. And as a result of that, he's now, you know, in a drug rehabilitation center instead of being in a college environment. But he knows that at this point in his life, he has no other choice but to make good of the cards he's been dealt. And I love you, DarlWyn, and I'm proud of you for the changes that you're making in your life. For everyone out there, take your life into your own hands and seek help when it's necessary. Don't be ashamed and don't be embarrassed. Turn towards those who love you, who can help. Thank you. I'm Zim Van Adams. Until next time.